Right here, of course, all of you know Mayor Kenn Weise. He was appointed mayor in June of 2014 and subsequently elected mayor in 2016. Prior to serving as mayor, he served as an Avondale City Council member beginning in January 2006 when he was initially appointed to a vacant council seat. And he was later elected to the City Council in September of 2007, and during his tenure served as Avondale's vice mayor from 2008 to 2010. You always tell me not to read your whole bio, so I'll just say he and his wife Sherry have 2 daughters and have called Avondale home since 1995, and you just scored a cool lot, right? You're gonna build your dream house?
Yes,
Breaking news.
Right, so we just put our name on the list for Alomar. We're gonna stay in Avondale for the rest of our lives, and hopefully our last home if we can get our 2 daughters out of the house. But yeah, we're excited.
We'll see how that goes. And then my friend Giese, who is president of Phoenix Raceway, overseeing the promotion and operation of this modernized facility that is a top motorsports and entertainment destination. She previously held the role of managing director of business operations for International Speedway Corporation's design and development, after spending 15 years at Daytona International Speedway and Watkins Glen International. She is a native of Wisconsin and a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-River Falls, and she's all things awesome. I love to use that word on the news, and my producer always comes in the ear. He's like, "Don't you think it's a little immature to use the word awesome?" I can't kick the habit. I cannot kick the habit. Dr. Rey Rivera is bringing more than 25 years of higher education experience to his role as president of Estrella Mountain Community College. Appointed president on July 1st, 2019, Dr. Rivera's career reflects a strong connection to the classroom, students, and faculty. Before leading the college as president, Dr. Rivera served as EMCC's vice president of learning, and prior to that, he spent 15 years as a full-time EMCC mathematics faculty member, during which he served 2 terms as EMCC's faculty senate president. I needed your help during the pandemic when my son was asking me to do the math at home with him. 5th grade math proved to be very challenging. So thank you so much for being here, sir. Leea Haarz is an experienced international operations executive with a 25+ year career spanning engineering, technology development, manufacturing, plant management, and multi-plant organizational leadership with full P&L responsibility. Leea currently serves as Chief Operating Officer of Photocentric Group, and this is a photopolymer technology and innovation company. And leading the U.S. operations for Photocentric, she is focused on high growth enablement through capital expansion, process implementation, and organizational development. And I look forward to interviewing you for the series as well. So Leea, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And finally, Chapa, who you saw in the video. I know he was super excited to be on camera, front and center. An economic development professional who has led successful programs in multiple communities throughout through the country. Highly regarded for his strategic planning and business development skills, Kenn has worked alongside many well-known brands, including, I'll name a few here, General Motors, Bridgestone North America, Las Vegas Raiders, Amazon, Kroger, Levi's, and Google, all to assist in their relocation and or expansion needs. And I have to say, everyone who I have spoken with out in the community has really commended you and your economic development team for all of your non-stop hard work. So bravo to you, and thank you to the entire panel for being here. One quick round of applause for everyone. And I will kick things off here. We have some questions laid out, and then at the end we'll open it up to some audience questions here. Mayor, I'll begin with you. Avondale and the metro region have obviously weathered the pandemic storm surprisingly well, as we talked about in our interviews. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about what you attribute this to, and importantly, being forward-thinking, how does Avondale continue to grow from here?
Carey, before I answer that question, I do want to take a moment and thank the team Economic Development for putting on this event, but I want to recognize especially Cheryl Covert. Cheryl, where are you? This is Cheryl's baby. I think she recruited and threatened and got people to help, but I think you've done an amazing job. And I look around the room, and I see a lot of friendly faces and people that we know very well. And just this is awesome for the city. You know, when you ask that question, I think there's several factors that go into it. For me, one of the most important one is the relationship that City Council has with each other. And you see the turnout today for City Council. Many of you know this, we get along, we talk to each other, we check in with each other. We put our egos mostly at the door when City Council meetings start. But we are elected officials, so those egos sometimes pop up. But I will tell you that when I look at the room, and I can call up, Veronica and I talked 2 nights ago on Memorial Day. I see Tina and I see Mike and I see Curtis and I see other people. I think it's that relationship with council buying into the vision that we all have to make Avondale better. I also think it's the leadership that we put in place. And I've been on city council since 2000, would you say 6? Doing the math in my head. Yeah, 2006. The strongest team I've ever had with the city. I think that goes from Charles all the way down. You know, this year, as part of our success, we're going to end up the year with about $40 million in our general fund, which is incredible for a city our size. About another $20 million in reserves. And I think the investments that we've made as a council and with leadership over the last few years is paying dividends now. Putting people in the right place at the right time is key to our success right now.
And then can you touch on the housing boom while we're talking about the future of Avondale? I know we've talked about a lot of statistics, but on average right now, homes are selling in 11 days versus 31 last year. What are your expectations going forward?
I think we still have 1.5 years, 2 years in this market. When I look at the Comfort Report, which is what real estate agents use, Avondale has the highest number in the state. I think last time I checked it was around 980. 100 is a balanced market, so an equal number of buyers and sellers, and we're at 989. So that tells you the demand that we have. I can tell you that decisions that previous councils made on housing are paying dividends today. So I'm going to go back to 2010 and 11. Avondale housing market took an incredible hit. At one point, about 40% of the homes in the city were in foreclosure or abandoned or underwater. 40%. And the city council at that point made a decision to really slow down new construction with homes to give cover to those homeowners that were still hanging on. The worst thing you could do is introduce new competition into the market. So we made a decision to hold off on that, and that wasn't our focus. And then probably, Tina, what would you say, probably 4 years ago, 3 years ago, we made a decision to really kind of increase our housing offerings. And what you're seeing now is the fruits of that. I think we have 2 more years. Like you said, Sherry and I just put our names on the lot at Alomar. It's a 2-month wait. Our daughter Delaney put her name or went to go look at a house in a new development. It was 10 months on a waiting list and another 12 months to build. So think about that, 22 months. My hope is that it's not that long, because I think there's a lot of first-time home buyers that are getting squeezed out of that market. And Georgia and I have talked about this. I think it's important for cities to work with people like Nico and bring workforce housing to the valley. And right now it's difficult with the cost, but I think we can do that.
Thank you, Mary. And Julie, I want to move over to you. Who's excited about NASCAR coming back? I mean, this is really cool. And it was amazing because I went to go do the interview with you and you let me drive my car onto the track.
What?
I just...
Whoa!
Someday.
So let's talk about how NASCAR, Julie, has recently taken great strides in diversifying the track. And what are some of the areas that you are expanding, and how can Avondale businesses support you in these efforts?
Yeah, I think first of all, we're very proud to be part of the City of Avondale and seeing that video. I've been here now almost 3 years, and it's amazing what has changed. I need to use that. From Pena.
I'm more brash, that's why.
All right, you got me now. So for us, we finished our renovation in the fall of 2018, and the vision really was to create a venue that isn't just a motorsports venue, it's an entertainment destination. The vision as we move forward is to do a lot more events. We had a pretty robust plan in place, and then the last year obviously put a bit of a damper on that, but I can tell you as we move forward, we've got a lot of things in the works. Again, we will always be a NASCAR property. We have 2 races in March and November. We announced yesterday that NASCAR is returning its championship to the City of Avondale and Phoenix Raceway in 2022. So, yes. And we're incredibly proud of that. I have said, and I say in every single interview, it's my full intention, and I think this community's intention, to make it incredibly difficult for NASCAR to choose to move this championship somewhere else. And I'm proud of that. I think if you look at, when you talk about what the community can do, what we did last November in a pandemic, I still get notes, messages, comments from our industry that the moment that they got off the airplane, drove to Avondale, went to a hotel, went to a restaurant, they were always hit with some sort of message, signage, welcome to Avondale, welcome to the Valley, home of the NASCAR Championship. Those things, I can't underscore the importance of those things to our industry. They felt so incredibly welcome. They are still talking about it. They love coming to this market. That's a big piece of this, and I'm really proud of what we did. I'm really excited about what's ahead and what we can do moving forward. And the hope is its championship's got a nice long run. It spent 18 years in Miami. NASCAR has said that they want to move it around, but again, I really feel like there's not a lot of people. I don't think there's any market that can compete with what we have here.
Julie, thank you. And Dr. Rivera, I want to move down to you for this next question. So as we all know, Avondale restaurants and hotels, as the same across the country, were hit so hard during the pandemic, but also showed tremendous resiliency. That's a word I know Ken Chapa talks a lot about, resiliency in the city of Avondale, while new restaurants and hotels continue to open. So we wanted to know, how has your community college prepared for these new and returning jobs as the economy recovers?
Well, the good thing about community colleges is that we are America's like social justice engines, and we're built to be nimble, to respond to the workforce development needs of our community, and that's why community is in our name. So one of the things that we're doing in Estrella is that we have a very strong and vibrant culinary program that actually trains students to be in restaurants, trains them to be in hotels, and part of this is done through partnerships. So we have a really strong partnership with West Mech, who's one of our high school feeders, and their students can actually take a couple of credits and get a certificate in culinary principles that is a stackable credential that will feed into one of our associate degrees in culinary studies. And then if they choose to do so, they can continue in the hospitality trend and transfer to NAU and via our 90-30 program, where they can take 90 credit hours at UMCC and then 30 remaining at NAU and get a degree in hospitality leadership. So that's just one example of kind of how we're partnering with our local both education, K through 12 and higher educational institutions to kind of meet that need. To kind of spin it just slightly is that we also have a business component to restaurants, right? And we recently entered a partnership with the City of Avondale to help to assist with the social media presence of some of the small businesses. So I think what we're trying to do is just be nimble and trying to be responsive. And if I could just pivot just one slide more, there's also an IT component to a lot of the restaurants and businesses as well. And we're on the verge of opening an IT institute on the West Valley where students can get within 6 months credentials in things like Linux Plus, CompTIA, A+, Network Plus, and these are things that facilities like Microsoft are looking for to get students into the workforce in a very short time frame with skills that they're going to need that are going to apply for many different industries across the West Valley. So.
Thank you, Doctor. Leah, I have a question for you in just a moment, but since Dr. Rivera brought up the social media, I want to jump to you, Ken, and I want to talk about first, can you explain to this group what your department did when you mobilized forces in terms of, and I know Charles told me about this, going out and having your team promote the businesses via LinkedIn and Instagram stories and all of these other things, because obviously social media is important, but to do social media in a very impactful and cohesive way, that is a whole different level of support.
That's actually a really good story. So when the pandemic had hit, I think I was on the job for 3 weeks. Now, for those who know about economic development, people were trained in a very specific way to recruit and to do your expansion and retention. When the pandemic hit, it did something very different than what happened in 2008. The larger corporations, they contracted a bit. There might have been some modifications in staffing and whatnot, but they were going to be okay. It was really the small businesses that got impacted the hardest. And that was something, candidly, a lot of people in my profession we weren't used to dealing with. We were used to, you deal with the primary employers and the small businesses are going to fall in below it. What we did is, it was actually, I don't believe it was my idea. I think it was actually Cheryl's idea. But it originally started off with, let's go out there and start showing off these restaurants. We'll start showing the businesses that are still open. And it kind of turned into us doing these Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook stories where we were posting videos of us going out, getting takeout, showing off the menus, showing the things that businesses were still open. And everybody did their own version of what that looked like. And everybody kind of had their own flavor. And it was funny because each of us kind of picked up our own population of people that would follow specifically us to go out there and see our reviews. They weren't really reviews, but they were highlights of what the restaurants were doing. That really opened the door for us and everything we did with social media going forward. We've had an incredible presence on social media. We're probably one of the most aggressive economic development organizations that I've seen in Arizona and throughout the country. I'll be that bold. We are very, very aggressive. And the team's just been right behind that, and they've embraced it. So a lot of success. Small businesses have been all over it. We love it, and that's actually given birth to our local Edge program, which is our BRE Entrepreneur Small Business Program. It's a nice hybrid. I keep adding things onto it. But that's been embraced very, very well. And you made a comment about us going out during the pandemic. I'm gonna echo something the mayor just did in recognizing the team, but something different. I gave them an amazingly huge lift to do this past month. It was our first annual business blitz. This team visited every single business in the city of Avondale and dropped out the logo. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen anybody do that before. So I am extremely proud of them, and again, big happy on our side.
So let's put two of those things in context, if you don't mind. How many people on your team?
Right now, there's 7 of us.
Okay. When we did the Barrio Queen Facebook Live, how many people signed in?
So that's a great story right there. So Barrio Queen, so we've been streaming ribbon cuttings, and and again, I'm going to say we were the first economic development organization to virtually stream ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings post-pandemic or during the pandemic. Before Barrio Queen, our highest reach was, at least it was 10,000 in the first 48 hours for Trapper Sushi, which was phenomenal. Barrio Queen had a reach of over 11,000 people in the first hour. Okay. It's just been phenomenal, and people have embraced it. And as we get into more discussions about post-pandemic and what that looks like, there are certain things that aren't going away. Virtual ribbon cuttings, virtual groundbreakings aren't going away. They're just too engaging, and people like to participate in them.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, and Robin, you're getting a lot of shout outs today. You can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. Leah, I want to get you into the conversation. Let's talk about supply chain issues that are posing a lot of challenges to many Avondale businesses, and what impact this is having, and what can we expect in the near and midterm. Before you talk about that, though, can you just explain a little bit more about what your company is? There were a lot of big words in the introduction that I had for you.
Thank you. Is this hot? Is this hot?
That one's not hot. There you go.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be able to be here and meet a lot of the people that I've spoken with, either on the telephone or virtually through Zoom meetings. Kenn and I actually bonded over the city of Detroit. I'm originally from Detroit, and I've always said if Detroit and Phoenix had a baby, it would be El Paso, which is where I come from. I come from Detroit by way of El Paso to live here in the Phoenix area. No, thank you for having me. It's great to put a face to the names of people that I've spoken with, and what a welcoming community this is. And my hat's off to Kenn and his team, who've made it so easy for us to connect with the people that we need to in order to be successful in our pending project. Photocentric is a technology company that has patented and unique photopolymer formulations and ways of fabricating things out of photopolymer. Photopolymer is just a polymer that has an agent in it that cross-links at different wavelengths of light, so you can make things from it. And our managing director and the founder of the company in the UK, Paul Holt, is a brilliant man who has developed most of this technology and has surrounded himself with a fantastic team. He wants to be a company, he has a vision for the company to be the largest provider of photopolymer products in the world, which is just a small aspiration. He recognizes that the US market is a key for that. I mean, there's a huge US market for products, and he knows that the key to that is vertically integrating, which I'll talk about in a minute. So that's why we're here, and that's why we're expanding. And Ken and his team came to our facility and walked through the spaghetti diagram of a manufacturing facility that it is. It's horrible, it gives me nightmares. And we have an opportunity now to come and lay out a facility in a brand new building and do it in a way that's going to be super productive and very visually pleasing to my chemical engineering eyes. So, and we're locating here because of the talent and the opportunity. So, when we think about supply chain, and by the way, I could write a dissertation on this topic. It's just kind of a broad topic, but let's narrow it just a little bit. When we think about supply chain and we think about operation strategy, we tend to think about three legs of a stool. So we have capacity for providing something, we have an inventory of the thing that we're providing, and then we have a lead time, how long it's going to take to bring something to a customer. And if any one leg of that stool becomes unbalanced, then the whole supply chain has to respond to that. So I tend to think about the current dynamic in terms of those three legs. If I were to take you back 10 years ago and we were talking about dynamic in supply chain, we would say most companies were recognizing that they needed to diversify out of the Asian basket, out of China. Currency was increasing. Cost of living was increasing. Companies were going inside China further in order to chase lower wages, and the supply chain was becoming just too heavy, too difficult to operate. So a lot of companies were already bringing manufacturing back to the Americas because Mexico and the US were more at a parity in terms of just cost, but superior in terms of lead time for customers. So we would have been talking about that. And I think the things that have happened recently, I mean, whether it's a global pandemic or it's a shortage of containers to ship product overseas, or it's backup at the ports, or it's factory fires and weather and force majeure and all of these crazy things, the ship being blocked in the canal, I mean, it's a perfect nightmare of supply chain things, and all of that has exposed difficulties in the supply chain, but has accelerated what I think was already starting 10 years ago, which is manufacturing coming back to the Americas. So, given that, and given now, I mean, this is my first event to come to. I was saying that today when we were talking. This is my first event to come not wearing a mask, fully vaccinated, shaking hands. It feels kind of strange. I'm gonna get used to it again. But this is all bringing pent-up demand. So we have, holes in our supply chain worldwide, a complex system, and pent-up demand, which is just having us all feverishly working on those things. So you'll see companies that are adding capacity to try to prop up that leg of the stool. You'll see companies that have very long lead times of materials because they can't get them to market, and they were holding small inventories, which is what we're taught in Lean to do. So companies that are successful in this time frame are companies who really mapped their supply chain. So they knew where all of the materials were coming from. And what you'll see is companies are going now 2 and 3 levels deep in the supply chain, really deeply understanding where all the materials are coming from. And not just those things that we thought were important before, the high-tech items or the high-cost items, Now, a plastic bag can hold you up and keep you from serving your customers. So we're gonna see people prioritizing differently what they look for and really minimizing risk and making the supply chain more nimble. That's what I see coming, and I see that we're gonna be in this constraint situation for at least the next year, and the companies that do well are the companies who are larger and have the resource to be able to really investigate their supply chains and partner with 2 and 3 levels deep in the supply chain.
Leah, thank you. Mayor, I want to come back over to you now and talk about South Avondale. Has a lot of room to grow, especially as SR30 is on the horizon. So what does this mean for Avondale's future, and how do you think this area can be positioned for success?
And it's a great question. Georgia and I had the opportunity to meet with the West Valley mayors and some stakeholders yesterday with Senator Mark Kelly. And one of the comments he made was, he said, I was dreading coming out here, not because I was going to meet with all of you, but traveling on I-10, and I didn't want to be late, and I wish there was an option. And I looked at Georgia across the table, and I thought Georgia was going to come out of her chair and go, there is an option. So, the area that you're in now is considered South Avondale, and I will tell you that, and nothing against you, Carey, but I hate the term South Avondale and North Avondale. And I understand we do it from a perspective on the map, but it's one Avondale. I think what you've seen us do is in historic Avondale, which you're in now, is the city has made critical investments. This facility, our new public safety facility, is going to go south of here next year, 2 years? 2 years. 2 years. We're making investments on Western Avenue, and we're branching out. SR30 brings a whole new opportunity because it's a blank slate. And where that freeway is going, yes, you have Alomar and you have Verde Trails going in as residential, but you don't have a lot of commercial or industrial. The key for SR30 and Avondale's fate, and I would also argue Goodyear's fate, is what 2026 looks like when Prop 500 gets put into implementation. Voters are going to have a chance to vote on it in 2022. We're still figuring out what that tax looks like. Will it stay a half cent? Will it go higher? Will it go 20 years or 25 years? For us, for West Valley mayors, it has to include the Buckeye connection. So from 85 through Goodyear and Avondale to the 202, where Phoenix's high-tech corridor will be, and then eventually going 202 to I-17. Right now, the Buckeye connection is not included in MAG planning. That's a mistake. How do you bring international trade, which we were talking about earlier, from Mexico? How do you bring products from Yuma and from California, bring them through the Phoenix metro area, and distribute them to the rest of the country? Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Phoenix and this, with the West Valley being a hub for trade. And 20 years ago, we would have never said that. So that's kind of the key to South Avondale and how we develop what we do as a city to promote a real diversity of industries. So commercial, residential, high tech, how do we complement what Phoenix is doing? How do we complement what Goodyear's doing? And if you give me another minute, I want everyone to look at those mountains behind us, the Estrella Mountains. So 2 years ago, Avondale worked out a deal with BLM, Bureau of Land Management, I'll clarify that, and Gila River Indian Community to give us access to land on that side of the Estrellas. And it's part of our planning area. It's about 35,000 acres. To put that in perspective, that's about the size of Avondale is right now. So that is a blank slate for future councils to write and future staffs. But I also think that's the really exciting part, because that really, if you talk about South Avondale, that's really South Avondale. But I think there's a lot of exciting things that are happening from this side going all the way south.
And I like how you all continue to talk about the integration. And I know Charles said to me when I interviewed him, I asked him the question, what makes for a great city? And he said, everyone gets to benefit, people who have been there and the people who are all living it. That was one thing that you were really, really...
Quality of being, I think.
Quality of being, yes, exactly. Dr. Rivera, I want to come back over to you now. And it's been some exciting news to report about the 4-year college degrees being made available. Congratulations. Okay. That is huge for all of you and for the community. So I wanted to ask you, what does this mean for Avondale regarding workforce development and future business attraction specifically?
Well, thank you. I mean, it's certainly a great surprise for us. I mean, the baccalaureate degree had been in the legislators' sites for quite a while, and for it to get signed by the governor a few weeks ago was truly an amazing event. What it means for us and for the West Valley in particular, so it's a really timely question. I'm working with both the Glendale Community College President Leea Haarz and Westmark to actually gather a group of economic developers in the West Valley on June 23rd to really address, where are the potential gaps when you look at the economic development themes and workforce needs of the West Valley, and how the community colleges can be strategically placed to address those needs. Now, as far as a 4-year pathway, the legislation does cap us. We cannot just offer 4-year degrees willy-nilly. We're going to be at a 5% cap initially and eventually go to 10%. But what that means is that we have to be strategic, and we're going to have to partner with other universities in terms of what we do. We want to focus primarily on career technical education. So, as I mentioned earlier, community is part of our title, Estrella Mountain Community College, which means that we feel it's our charge to help the West Valley grow by building the necessary infrastructure to maintain that growth. So we're looking at careers such as police, fire science, IT, nursing, education. These are going to be things that we're going to be focusing on county-wide. We certainly can't do all that at Estrella, so we're going to have to partner with Glendale and our other community colleges within the county to make things happen in a regional scale.
Thank you so much. Julie, I want to come back over to you. You sort of laid the groundwork for the exciting things to come. I wondered if you could give this group a little bit more specific details, maybe break some news here, I don't know, on what we can look forward to. I know you are cooking up all kinds of really exciting things.
Yeah, we timed today really well. Thank you, Cheryl, for the opportunity, but just before I headed here, we had sent the announcement that we are going to be at full capacity this November for NASCAR Championship weekend. No restrictions. It feels really good to say out loud. And that's due to the support that we have again from the City of Avondale and Maricopa County, and so excited. This championship for us, we announced it in spring of 2019. Last year was our first year. Lots of big ideas, expectations. We were sold out February of last year, and as the year rolled on, we continued to plan and have lots of different scenarios. And fortunately, we didn't get to pull out the full playbook. We were allowed to have fans, which again we were so grateful for, that we were able to still host that event and do a tremendous job with it. So as we look ahead to this November, tickets for Sunday are essentially sold out. We've got a few things on the hillside, and we're working to create some additional availability in different areas to maximize the capacity. Camping has been sold out for months, and a lot of positive momentum. The other really positive part about this is from an industry perspective, we also announced that if you've been to the track and you've gone to our infield experience, that is what I think sets Phoenix Raceway apart. It is an immersive fan experience. You are part of Victory Lane. You can walk into the NASCAR garages. You are truly part of that experience, and you can make it your own. We announced today as well that that experience will resume in its entirety, which is really important for us, and that means celebrating championships each and every day. We'll crown 4 champions. Our fans will get to be part of it. They'll be down on the Crescent area with us, celebrating all the things that we wanted to do last year. We are going to dust off and do this year, obviously creating that safe experience for everyone attending, but then also for our community is a priority for us. So we'll continue to work on that and really just continue to put our best foot forward. We're so excited. Today I got to tell the staff, and the smiles on their faces and hearing from the race fans and just being able to be in a room and say, we're going to be full. And it's tremendous, so we're looking forward to it.
Well, thank you for breaking that news right here. I'm sure we'll be hearing all about that tonight, because that is really big news, and congratulations. I know how hard you have been working. We're going to do a few more questions and final thoughts, and I do want to turn it over to the audience here to keep everyone on time and respect your time during this lunch hour period. Kenn, I wanted to ask you a question about, we've obviously been talking about how incredible your team has been and how much you're doing. I mean, when I looked at all of your job duties, I was like, whoa, this guy's a really busy guy. You have a lot under your umbrella, and you've handled it very well. Talk to us about how folding the tourism component into economic development, what was the strategy behind that, and what do the business leaders need to know about that?
So for those of you that don't know, about 2 years ago, the city made a decision to bring the destination marketing organization in-house. We were part of a larger conglomerate before that. This year was the first year, 2021, FY 2021 was the first fiscal year where we really started our own destination marketing organization. And to help us support that, I actually stole somebody to visit Mesa. Nikki Taylor's here. She's doing a great job for us. And you probably saw the branding out there in Discover Avondale. Has just taken off. Currently we have about 411 rooms right now in the city. That's going to double in the next 2 to 3 years. And we're going to be over 1,000 rooms probably in the next 5 years. Okay, so when you have that many rooms, when you have proximity to things like the track, and you have access to all the different spring training facilities, Mayor Lord, I do broadcast. We're very close to the Red Stadium, so we have access to a lot of these different sports amenities. There's an opportunity for Avondale to become that ground central. Somewhere along the line, and I don't really understand, I don't understand the whole history of it all, but somewhere along the line, tourism and economic development got separated. They're not separate. They're two branches of the same tree. And really, what the vision of ECDEV is really not to say we only do this and they only do that. It's to be holistic. You have to look at the entire area. You have to look at the primary employers. You have to look at the retail, the hospitality. You have to look at the small businesses, and they all fit, and they all work off each other. And I think that us bringing that DMO in house was really our first step to embracing that.
And one last question for you, Ken, and we'll have some final thoughts here. But can you talk about? I think it's really interesting to hear more about the future of the corporate office structures, because you talked about that in the interview that I conducted with you, and that's really important because there are a lot of commuters. And you talked about the changing face of corporate office work.
It's funny because I go back again, when I first started here, I think everybody had a vision about what they thought corporate office was going to look like. Over the past 18 months, that has changed dramatically. Depending on which newspaper you read, or which time of the week you read it, and which reporter's reporting, it's going to be, everybody's going to go back to work again by January of 2022. Everybody's going to be telecommuting. Or we're all going to everybody's going to be replaced by AI. Those usually the three options here. So I think what we're going to see is really a transitionary time. I think right now people have gotten used to working at home. Those virtual office environments. We're going to see more. I'm not going to say WeWork specifically, because I think there's some good things about that model, but there's obviously some other non-good things about that model. We are going to see those reduced office spaces, more social distancing. We're going to see people kind of cycling in and out of the office, and I think we are going to see some more movement in the field of AI. It was interesting because right before the pandemic hit, so whether you agree with his politics or not, I was reading a book by Andrew Yang called The War on Normal People, and he started to kind of talk about how AI and automation was going to change how we do business in the world. And we've kind of been holding it off. And it was a really interesting read. He described really the only reason why AI has not been embracing more, especially in the office environment, is because it can't pass the Turing test, which I don't know if you're all familiar with that or not. It's this test that's given to AI mechanisms to see how lifelike to people it is. Okay, it's getting close. It's getting very, very close. And the cost of actually deploying it. During the pandemic, Japan made some huge strides. They've had a decreasing population since 2008. They've had to reinforce their workforce with automation and AI, and it's starting to become more affordable, and it's starting to get very close to that Turing test. So the question is, what does that look like for blue collar and white collar workers? As EDers, we're constantly thinking about that, what that winning looks like, and how that's going to impact us in the long term. But in the short term, we're looking at smaller footprints and probably cycling employees in and out.
Thank you, Ken. And Leea, I want to get one final comment from you, and then we'll kind of make the rounds here, and we'll go out to the audience. What are you most looking forward to right now? You talked about the lofty goals of your company and that you have a lot of optimism about setting up in Avondale. How many people do you employ, by the way?
We have about 50 employees today. We'll be adding hundreds over the next years.
So a lot of growth in your future. What are you most looking forward to?
You ask me these very simple questions, because they're very broad. So I just met our new neighbor, our fellow factory person who's laying out his factory as well as we are. You know, I'm looking forward to creating a world-class manufacturing facility and being able to grow in the way that our founder desires to grow, and creating a lot of jobs. When it comes to manufacturing, AI will not take over. People are the ones that are creating value for customers, whether it's in a product or a service. And so people are at the center of what we're doing. And I get excited about people being able to learn new skills and work with new technology and automation. When it comes to 3D printing, which was one of our methods of creating things out of photopolymer, the 3D printers that I used when I was in college, just a few years ago, you know, the parts that we would create were just models so that we could hold something that was three-dimensional. They weren't functional in any way, and now we have materials that you can produce. You can actually produce product that's functional and goes right into production. I mean, that's amazing, and I would have never thought that would be the case. And 5 years from now, we're going to be using some other fabrication technology that we haven't even determined yet. And so I get excited about people learning how to use technology and about programs that exist like at the community college to really teach people about automation and teach people about practical problem solving.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rivera. One final question for you before we go to the audience. How are you planning to keep your students so that they feel safe returning and feel energized to take what they've learned, the hard lessons that so many have had to navigate through the pandemic, and really help to accelerate them?
That's a really great question. So right now, we're looking at our data, and when you look at the 4-year trend, for those students that were taking, or new students taking online classes, it's been hovering at like 3 or 4%. And so the only blip is last fall when everything was online, right? I think we're at 13%. So we know that new students coming into Estrella are not comfortable in an online environment. But we also know that this, according to what Ken said earlier, our employees or current students have been accustomed, they've been customized to this new the new COVID environment and navigating that. So we're actually going to try to do a balance of both in-person classes, hybrid classes where they come maybe once a week as opposed to 2 or 3 times a week, and then of course keep the remote environment in place. And to keep our employees and students safe, we're going to follow the CDC guidelines in terms of social distancing. We're still going to continue mask wearing on our campuses because of the close environment, particularly in our lab spaces. But we want our students back. When you go to Estrella right now, it's just a little bit of a ghost town. And so I miss that interaction, because what made us a great college was the interactions with our students. We were never built to be an online institution. We're not a Rio Salado, we're not University of Phoenix. So we want our students back, and we know about 70% of our students are first generation, and that population needs a lot of hand-holding in terms of registration, in terms of the learning environment. So I'm looking forward to bringing our employees back to provide those student-facing services so that we can be as successful as possible in serving their needs.
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. They're really lucky to have you leading the way over there, by the way, I have to say. Julie, I want to ask you one closing question here. You just talked about this great news and being able to share it with your folks, and I'm sure that there was a lot of relief and maybe even some tears as they look at being able to return to normal. What do you think was the #1 lesson you learned in navigating your team through what you guys have just walked through?
That's a great question. I think the thing that I learned through all of this is the way I react to things and the positive attitude, they reacted that way. And keeping a focus on the fact that we are still hosting a NASCAR Championship. We were still selected to host the NASCAR Championship. That's important. The team was given that opportunity. We had that. Celebrating the small wins. It wasn't, we knew, I'll tell you what, we held out hope all last year. We had probably at least two dozen different scenarios as we went into the summer on how this could look, what this could look like, different capacity numbers, how do we decide who gets to come and who doesn't get to come. And everyone really approached that with the same tenacity that they do right now, planning for a full championship. And I think that's just a testament to the focus that our team has, the fact that we do get to host this amazing event. It's an honor and something we really are working hard not to take for granted. And again, NASCAR tells us it's a year to year, so we aren't taking it for granted. And I'm really proud of how the team reacted, and our fans have been so tremendously supportive. They all wanted to be there, but they understood why. They couldn't be there, and today, just being able to finally say, okay, we're opening the doors, come on back, it's been really positive.
Thank you, Julie. And Mayor, to you, what is your number one priority right now?
You know, I think that, and Marie Rogers, who was the former mayor of Avondale, said to me one day as she was leaving office, she said, I wish I had been mayor when the economy was better. And that's a powerful statement. For me, my priority is making sure, you said something about not taking it for granted, making sure that the success that we have right now, we don't take for granted. We stay hungry as an organization. We stay hungry when I see Aaron doing online classes on how to navigate the government PPPs. I want to stay hungry when I see council members going to events and doing ribbon cuttings and engaging the community. I want us to stay hungry. I want us to understand that we're in competition with Goodyear. Georgia, you know I love you. but we are in competition with Goodyear and Buckeye and Towson and Litchfield and all the cities that make up the West Valley. There is nothing worse than a satisfied salesperson, right? They don't go out and work, they don't go out and knock on doors. I don't want us to ever be satisfied. I want us to celebrate our victories, and then I want us to move on to the next thing. And I see Charles nodding his head. So not taking it for granted is a great term. So that's kind of what I want to prioritize.
Very good, and Ken, I'm not ignoring you. I'm going to give you the final word when we wrap. I do want to ask if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask of the panel. Oh, you guys have done a really good job answering those questions then.
Come on, we got dressed up.
No specific questions from the group? Well, Ken, then we'll close things out with you. Just what is next for you and your team leading the charge? I thought what the mayor just said was really important. And I know you have been working at such an accelerated pace, for lack of a better word. Where do you go from here?
That's a great question. You're constantly looking ahead. What's the next opportunity? And you're constantly looking outside that mold of what standard winning looks like, and you're always looking at the future. What does winning look like in the future for Avondale and for this region? And it's an ongoing process. Actually, the reason why I started working back in the office again was because I was staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning thinking about what was happening in the future, and my wife did not appreciate that. So, but there's a lot of cool stuff going on, and technology's changing. There's a lot of great opportunities out there, and we want to make sure Avondale's positioned to take advantage of that.
And do you want to leave them with anything, one specific headline from you that you want this group to take away?
While you're in Avondale, there's a great place down the street here called Western Avenue. Go down there, spend some money, enjoy yourselves. There's a lot of product here. There's a lot of cool things here. Enjoy yourselves in Avondale, and let's keep in mind what it is now, and come back in 12 months. It'll look a lot different.
There you go. Thank you all so very much.